We're now on day 9 of the Diddy trial. Inside a packed Manhattan courtroom, now the center of one of the most explosive scandals in music history, something no one saw coming happened again. The court had already heard from major names, Cassie, Will Smith, Monique, but then out of nowhere, Ice Cube walked in. And the energy shifted instantly. He didn't show up to make a scene. He wasn't chasing cameras or headlines. He walked in with purpose, and in his hands was a folder. Inside were connections, names, voice memos, and paperwork that made the entire courtroom go dead silent. But in that moment, everyone realized this wasn't just about Diddy anymore. What Ice Cube was exposing was a system, one that didn't just protect power, it enforced it. A system built on silence, fueled by fear, and designed to reward obedience. This wasn't about fame. It wasn't even about money. It was about control. And the moment you stopped playing along, you weren't just pushed out, you were erased. For years, people whispered names. Jamie Foxx, Oprah Winfrey, Quincy Jones. But now, those whispers had evidence. And the one bringing it forward was Cube. Reporters barely had time to process it. The flash of cameras, the shuffle of papers, Diddy's lawyers trying to keep composure. And then, boom, the doors opened. Ice Cube, eyes locked forward like he'd been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. The tension hit like a wave. Some jurors sat up straighter, eyes locked forward. Even the judge paused for a second, clearly caught off guard. And when Diddy finally looked up and realized who had just entered, his whole expression shifted. "I wasn't invited," Cube said. "I came here on my own." The judge nodded. And in that moment, Cube started talking. The judge gave a small nod. And just like that, Ice Cube began to speak. But he didn't sound like a performer. Not like a rapper, not like the movie star people knew. He spoke like a man who had been carrying a secret for years and was finally done staying quiet. He looked straight at the jury and said, "Some of y'all didn't realize I was not part of their inner circle. That's what pissed them the most." The room went silent. What came next didn't just rattle the courtroom. It cracked open an illusion that had protected the powerful for decades. Cube started with the club. The secret circle in the entertainment world that nobody dares to name, but everyone knows exists. The ones smiling on red carpets, making deals behind the curtain, gatekeepers, power brokers. They don't bring you in because they like you, Cube told them. They bring you in to control you, and if you don't play along, that's when it starts. He turned his eyes toward Diddy, who sat there visibly shaken. They cancel your meetings, they plant fake stories, they start rumors, they make calls you never hear, but you feel the impact. Cube said he watched it happen for years. Real artists, good people invited into a golden circle, given a taste of success, then told to kneel, told to sign the paper, play the part, smile for the camera. And if you say no, you don't just lose jobs, you disappear. And then Cube said it straight. Diddy wasn't just in the circle, he was the one pulling the strings. Jurors leaned in, the gallery went still. Even the judge looked like he needed a moment to process what had just been said. He leaned forward and asked, "Do you need a break?" Cube didn't even blink. He shook his head, turned back to the jury and said, "You want to know why I'm here? Because they tried to break someone I respect? Jamie Foxx." That's when the next secret drops, and trust me, it's just getting started. One celeb after another comes forward, and the chaos is just warming up. Reporters stopped writing, heads turned. Cube explained how it all started the way it always does. Friendliness, open invites, private parties, random phone calls from people you never thought would have your number. Jamie was rising fast. His talent is undeniable. And that's when they took notice. First, it's a compliment, Cube said, then favors, then it becomes controlled. He told the court that Jamie confided in him quietly, carefully, with fear in his voice. "They treat you like family," Cube said, "but only if you play the game. And if you don't, you let this silence answer." Cube spoke about the infamous basketball parties, the blacked out SUVs, the no phone rules, the strange guests. It wasn't just basketball, he said. It was a test to see who you'd obey, who you'd question, and who you'd protect. Jamie always stayed respectful, smiled, played it cool, but he never gave in completely. And that's when the shift began. Suddenly, Jamie was difficult. Suddenly, his health was in question. His name banished from movie headlines and popped up in shady gossip blogs. Cube said that medical emergency in 2023, That wasn't just health, it was a warning. Cube didn't stop there. He said Diddy's inner circle didn't just host parties, they recorded them, collected footage, built files. People never knew they were being filmed. But they were, and once they had it, they kept it. Cube told the court Jamie once called him after one of those events. He didn't explain much, but what he did say was chilling. Cube, I can't talk about it, but I can't unsee it either. And just when the room couldn't get quieter, Cube dropped another name, Oprah. It wasn't just puff, he said, it goes deep. He explained that right before Jamie's big Oscar moment, after Ray, in the middle of his rise, he got a phone call. It was Oprah. But she wasn't calling to celebrate. She told Jamie, "You're blowing it." Jamie was stunned. He thought she was reaching out with support. Instead, she told him to pull himself together and said she'd be introducing him to someone who could help. That someone was Quincy Jones. Cube said he didn't need to explain who Quincy was. Everyone in Hollywood knows, he said. On the outside, he's a legend, but behind the scenes, he's feared. Oprah brought Jamie to Quincy's house. But it wasn't a celebration, it wasn't advice, it was something else entirely. Jamie told Cube it was one of the strangest nights of his life. He said it didn't feel like help, it felt like training, like he was being prepped for something. Cube said Jamie never fully explained what happened that night, but the look in his eyes when he tried to, that was enough. Oprah called it responsibility, Cube said. Quincy called it legacy, but what they really gave him was a leash. After that meeting, Jamie started to change. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. Cube recalls him saying, "The only way to survive in this game is to pretend." And Cube said he watched him pretend for years. But today, nobody's pretending anymore. Cube leaned back in his chair, calm, serious. Then he said it, Quincy Jones ain't just a producer, he's the godfather. The courtroom froze. Cube looked to the judge. "This isn't gossip," he said. "This is truth, and it needs to be on the record." He described Quincy as someone who's praised in public, feared in private. Someone whose power came not just from talent, but from what he had on people. "You don't get that powerful without making deals," Cube said. And I'm not talking about music deals, I'm talking about soul trades. He explained that Jamie wasn't introduced to Quincy by accident. That meeting was arranged. A handoff from one handler to the next. Jamie told him, "Cube, that wasn't guidance, that was instruction." According to Cube, Quincy made it seem like mentorship, but Jamie knew the truth. "It felt like I was being processed," he said. "Not helped, processed." And Jamie wasn't alone. Cube said he'd heard similar stories from other men in the industry. Talented men who vanished, who had public breakdowns, who changed their whole image overnight and were never the same again. Quincy's charm might be the mask, Cube said, but the message is the same as Diddy's. Do what you're told or you won't work again. And then he dropped something even darker. Cube said he had seen photos, private ones, passed around in secret over the years. Pictures that were never meant to exist. In every one of them, Quincy was there, smiling. But the people in the photos, they weren't smiling, Cube said. He told the court he couldn't confirm everything, but he could confirm this. Quincy isn't just a mentor, he's a middleman. And the ones he answers to, we still don't know their names. Then he stood a little taller. "You want to know how they keep you quiet?" he asked. "It's not just fear, it's blackmail." Cube said Diddy's power wasn't just in his money. It was in the secrets he kept. The footage, the files, the tapes collected over decades, from parties, hotels, studios, private jets, all organized, all saved, all weaponized. "They don't just invite you to party," Cube said. "They record you at those parties." He turned to the prosecution. "You want to know why so many stayed silent? Ask how many got a flash drive in the mail. Ask how many got a blocked call playing audio of something they don't even remember. Ask how many careers vanished after they said no." And Jamie, he wasn't the only one. Cube said he knew 2 other actors who had been caught up in Diddy's events. One of them even called him terrified, saying he blacked out after midnight and woke up in a hotel room with a contract on the table. Ice Cube had spent the last few minutes talking about others. Jamie Foxx, Quincy Jones, the system, the silence. But now he turned the spotlight on himself. "I went to one of those parties," he said, "just once. It was the early 2000s, no official invite, no flyer, just a name, a time, and a black SUV waiting outside his hotel. And they called it a networking night. That's what they always call it." Cube said the car drove him into the Hollywood Hills, up a long, winding driveway. He arrived at a massive mansion in Beverly Hills. The gate shut behind him. The sound of it locking felt louder than it should have. His phone was taken at the door. No cameras allowed, but plenty were watching. Inside, it wasn't a party, it was a setup. The lights were low, too low. There was no music, no laughter, no champagne, just soft voices, scattered groups whispering, and security stationed in every corner like they were guarding something or someone. The vibe was off, completely off. And then there were the rooms, unmarked doors, some barely cracked open. Cube said he could hear things, strange things, sounds that didn't match the mood. And behind some of those doors, things he didn't want to imagine. He saw familiar faces, celebrities, A-listers, but they didn't look like themselves. Some looked dazed, some looked scared, some looked like they didn't even know where they were. Then came the moment that changed everything. Cube said he turned a corner and saw a man he admired, one of the biggest names in the game, slumped on a couch, eyes wide open, blank. And across from him, a camera, recording, silent, watching. That was it. Cube left. No questions, no small talk. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked out, got back in the car, stayed silent the entire ride back. But it wasn't over. The next day, he got a phone call. No ID, no greeting, just one line. "We saw you leave." Cube told the jury nothing else ever came of it, no direct threat, no follow-up, but he didn't need one. "I understood the message," he said, loud and clear. That night stayed with him for years. It changed how he looked at the industry, at people, at success. That wasn't a party, Cube told the jury. That was a trap. Then he turned toward Diddy. Calm, controlled. "You didn't just ruin lives," he said. "You filmed them first." The courtroom went dead silent. Even Diddy's lawyer, normally quick to interrupt, was whispering fast in his ear. But Diddy didn't move. His face was pale, his jaw locked tight, his eyes fixed on nothing. Because this time, the cameras weren't under his control. And by now, the courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a confession. Even Diddy's legal team had stopped objecting. There was nothing left to say. But Ice Cube wasn't finished. Not yet. They didn't just try to silence Jamie Foxx, Cube said. They tried to erase him. He meant exactly what he said. Cube explained to the jury that in Hollywood, silence isn't optional, it's enforced. Not by direct threats, but by a pattern, a strategy. The kind that slowly makes someone disappear without anyone realizing what's happening. After Jamie started backing away from Diddy's circle, things started falling apart strategically. First, the roles dried up. Projects he'd already been cast in were suddenly postponed. Meetings were canceled, one after another. Collaborators he'd worked with for years suddenly stopped picking up the phone. Cube said it didn't feel random. He pulled out a document, a calendar showing Jamie's scheduled work from 2019 to 2021. On the surface, it looked like a normal industry slowdown, but then Cube highlighted something chilling. A series of back-to-back cancellations, all connected to companies tied to Bad Boy, Revolt, or one of Diddy's many satellite ventures. He let the paper sit there, silent proof. Cube said it didn't stop with the jobs. Next came the whispers, the gossip blogs, the sources claiming Jamie was unstable, unpredictable, losing touch. He wasn't losing it, Cube told the court. He was freeing himself, and they didn't like that. Then came the health scare. Cube paused, looked down, took a breath. "You really think that was natural?" he said quietly. "A man in peak condition just collapses on set. Right after he starts making noise about what he saw." He wasn't pointing fingers directly, but the weight of his words made it clear what he believed. "I don't know what happened in that hospital," he said, "but I know fear. I know retaliation." And that wasn't just a medical emergency, that was a warning. According to Cube, Jamie had been offered multiple chances to come back. They dangled new movie deals, press tours, redemption arcs. All he had to do was play the game. Shake hands, smile, act like nothing happened. But Jamie refused. And that's when it escalated. That's when they tried to replace him, Cube said. That's when the clone rumors started. People began questioning everything. Was Jamie still alive? Was it even him in the photos? Why was he avoiding the public? Cube didn't call it a conspiracy. He called it a tactic. That's what they do, he said. They take you apart piece by piece until even your fans don't know what's real anymore. His voice dropped again. That's how they keep their power, not just with fear, but with erasure. Then Cube turned to the jury. His tone sharpened. "This ain't about music," he said. "It's not even about parties, it's about control." He looked each juror in the eye, then nodded toward the prosecution. They don't just shape what we listen to, they shape what we believe, what we fear, who we follow. Hollywood, he explained, wasn't just an industry. It was a machine engineered to take real identity, real trauma, and sell it back as entertainment. You think it's freedom, he asked? No, it's scripted. Every album pushed, every movie funded, all by design. Then he dropped the line that made the room shudder. The same people who pushed prison music, Cube said, will own the prison. He said that's what Tupac tried to warn the world about before they silenced him, before he got too political, before he started pointing at the ones behind the curtain. And just like that, the courtroom wasn't watching a trial anymore. They were watching an entire system unravel. Ice Cube didn't hold back. He told the jury those wild parties the world gossiped about weren't really parties. They were vetting rooms, places where artists were tested, watched, filmed. They weren't celebrations, Cube said. They were traps. He explained how Diddy's parties worked, like secret auditions. If you played along, you were protected. If you didn't, you got punished. They were testing people on camera, he said, seeing who followed orders and who pushed back. Cube shared a story about a singer. She had talent, buzz, everything was going for her. But she said no, she refused to sign with Bad Boy after one of those invitations. And what happened next? Within months, her image flipped. She was labeled unstable, hard to work with, and her name disappeared from award shows. Her label dropped her, her calls went unanswered. Cube looked at the jury and paused. You think that was coincidence? Nah, that was punishment. Then he dropped the line that stopped the whole courtroom cold. Y'all sitting here trying to figure out what Diddy did, but the real question is, how many people helped him do it? And in that moment, the trial wasn't just about Diddy anymore. It was about everyone who stayed quiet, everyone who enabled it, everyone who helped cover it up. The judge leaned back in his seat. The gallery froze. Even the prosecution looked shaken. This was no longer a celebrity trial. It wasn't just about the system that let him thrive. It was about the people who supported it, protected it, and kept it alive. The judge asked if Ice Cube had any final words. He didn't hesitate. He stood up slowly, stepped off the stand, and walked to the center of the courtroom. Not in a rush, not for show. Like every step meant something. He looked Diddy dead in the eye. You built a kingdom out of other people's silence, he said. You called it success, but it was slavery. Diddy didn't move. He stared ahead, frozen, pale. But Cube didn't back down. You didn't just throw parties. You built prisons. Emotional ones, psychological ones. And you filled them with people who thought they were being celebrated, but were really being watched, controlled, and used. His voice didn't shake. It grew steadier with every word. You broke people, he said, and then you filmed it. Cube turned from Diddy and faced the gallery. To every artist watching this, every new kid who wants to be somebody, understand this: before they give you the keys to your dream, they're going to ask you for something back. Sometimes your voice, sometimes your dignity, sometimes everything. He scanned the room, and by the time you realize what you gave up, it's already too late. Then Cube paused and said something he hadn't said all day. I was scared. The room went still. I was scared because I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard, what I'd been invited into, and I stayed quiet because I thought if I didn't say anything, I'd be left alone. He looked at the jury, but silence doesn't protect you, it only delays the damage. Then he said it plain: silence makes you a collaborator. He reached into the folder he brought with him, pulled out a single photo. This was me, 1991, right-eyed, thought I could change the game, thought I could create without losing myself. He stared at the photo for a moment, then held it up high. That version of me, he said, he didn't make it. And then he tore it in half. But the one standing here now, the one who came to testify, he's not afraid of any of you anymore. The room was dead silent. Even Diddy's legal team had stopped objecting. Reporters stopped typing. Jurors stopped blinking. It didn't feel like a trial anymore. It felt like a funeral for the silence that once protected the system. Cube returned to the witness stand, carefully placed the torn photo on top of the folder, then looked up at the judge. I don't know what you'll do with all this, but now you can't pretend you didn't hear it. Now you know, all of you. He turned back to Diddy one final time. You thought nobody would speak up. You thought everyone was bought, skid, or buried. But the silence is broken now. The door you locked for so long, it's wide open. Then Cube stepped off the stand. He didn't stop to look at the press. He didn't glance at the jury. He walked down the aisle like a man who just laid down every truth he'd carried for decades. And just before he reached the exit, he turned slightly and said, "They didn't kill Jamie. They didn't kill me. They just made us louder." And with that, he left the courtroom. But what he left behind wasn't just testimony. It was a warning. It was a shift. And it was the start of a storm that no one in that room will ever forget.